Hi everybody, it's Jenny Smith. In this video I'm going to talk to you about how to lead a group discussion to develop a policy from scratch that includes student input to help give them ownership of and investment in a cell phone policy. I'll also talk about positive and negative reinforcement techniques. You're going to get several ideas on how to use both in your classroom. After that, we'll talk about how to use an encouraging tone to help students comply with the cell phone policy or even an outright ban, while making you come off like a smarter, more caring, more trustworthy teacher. This really can be accomplished. Let's learn how. So today's goal is to learn how to lead a group discussion on cellular phone policies to number 1, develop a new policy in class group, or number 2, explain an already existing policy. First, we'll talk about how to develop a policy from scratch in a group. Your class discussion should focus on 3 things. You need to determine if a need exists, define what ideal use looks like, develop the policy and the consequences, either positive or negative. So first, how do we determine if a need exists? You can ask yourself, do we need cell phones in our classroom? Why? What are some reasons that we might ban cell phones from our classroom? What does ideal use look like? In other words, what does it look like when everything is working great during class? You could ask students, where should your phone be when blank is occurring? Why? Are there exceptions? How can we handle exceptions? How does it affect you or others when your phone is used inappropriately? How does it affect you or others when your phone is used appropriately? These questions help students identify natural consequences for using a phone appropriately or inappropriately. We need to help students connect their behavior with results. All right, how about for developing policies and consequences? Ask students, how can we balance the positives of cell phones against the negatives? What policies will we develop to show our commitment to using cell phones in a way that supports each other? How can these policies be enforced fairly by or within our group? Can we use positive reinforcement methods instead of negative reinforcement methods to implement our policy? So most people, when they think about enforcing a cell phone policy, think about negative reinforcement methods. Is it even possible to use positive reinforcement in a classroom? Well, positive reinforcement is most effective when the person you're training is not already given to bad behavior and is eager to please. And it can improve your bond with that student or individual at the same time. Positive reinforcement ought to be your preferred method in seminary because, as you know from earlier lectures, teacher-student rapport is most likely to change student behavior. In the seminary classroom, we are not focused on helping students learn the most material, but we are focused on helping students live their best. Positive reinforcement can help with that goal. Positive reinforcement helps with motivation as well. If you're having students who are struggling with being motivated to attend class, finding ways to help them feel good while they are at class, as opposed to feeling scolded for being late or when they ask a dumb question or if they have a phone out at the wrong time, can help them feel motivated to participate fully. Now, there are 4 main types of positive reinforcers. Let's talk about some specific ways that you might use each in the seminary classroom. Now, there are natural reinforcers. These are reinforcers that occur directly as a result of the behavior. For example, a student uses cell phones appropriately and increases in gospel knowledge. They learn to use the gospel library tools like the footnotes, the maps, search, or Bible dictionary to find answers to their questions. They can feel the Spirit better as they participate during the lesson. They develop friendships as they listen to other members speak. You may need to help students identify natural benefits to using cell phones correctly, especially feeling the Spirit. Often students are not able to identify the Spirit when they're teenagers. Token reinforcers. These are those reinforcers that are awarded for performing certain behaviors and can be exchanged for something of value, like a point system, where a student earns stars, points, or some other token that they can save up and turn in for a reward. Maybe you do an award ceremony every so often, or you might set up a system where correct use of cell phones wipes out tardies or even absences. It could be a one-off coupon, a weekly tracker. You might even earn up points individually or as a team during March Madness. Students might earn Brigham bucks to spend at a seminary auction. I found token reinforcers to work for temporary things, but for me, it's hard to do token tracking long term. How about social reinforcers? These are those reinforcers that involve others expressing their approval of a behavior. For example, a teacher might say, "Good job," or "Excellent work." Social reinforcement is more likely effective with teens. Find ways to help them and to thank them in front of their peers when they do things right. Tangible reinforcers are reinforcers that are actually physical or tangible rewards, like a Pop-Tart or a gift card. Now, this is a little harder to do in church classes with little to no budget. If you're thinking about tangible positive reinforcement with teenagers, you might need some ideas for reinforcers that are age appropriate. After all, some teenagers will not go out of their way to earn a sticker or a piece of candy. As you might expect, the effectiveness of a reinforcer depends on the context. Natural reinforcers are often the most effective, but social reinforcers can be extremely powerful. Tokens are often more useful with children, while tangible reinforcers are essential for training dogs, for example. I'm personally not one for stickers or points, but if you print this guy on a piece of paper and tape it to a piece of candy or a Pop-Tart and pass it out at the end of class, well, I would feel encouraged. Look for ways to encourage more of the good behavior, and the bad behavior will automatically decrease. If you're dealing with a class that already has very bad habits, you may need to include some negative reinforcement techniques, especially removing the phone for the remainder of a class period. Now here's an idea for a phone jail, where the phone is kept in jail at the student's desk, but it's locked up for the remainder of class. If I were doing this in a seminary class, I'd use a black envelope and call it outer darkness. Now, I would not introduce cell phone jail without discussion in class. So let's say that you've decided to implement a cell phone jail as part of a policy. How about we talk for a second about how to discuss a cell phone policy that you've already developed? As we learned in earlier videos, a policy determined in advance by the instructor, stated on the course syllabus, and then discussed in class is the one preferred by both students and instructors. In these cases, students are offered input and the opportunity to discuss concerns. Instructors should be flexible with these policies and include student input in the policy if possible. My son is a student at Utah State. In his class, students received a syllabus before the class started, which said there were no cell phones or even laptops allowed for taking notes. I think you can imagine how students felt. On the first day of class, the professor spoke with students to explain the policy. He didn't allow cell phones because the type of teaching methods he was using made it impossible to use them without interfering with instruction. He asked students to take notes on paper because studies had shown that the type of thing they were studying was more easily remembered if students were writing notes instead of typing them or taking pictures of slides with their phones. The professor explained that he understood there were certain kinds of learning disability or other things that might need a student really needed to use a laptop. And if so, he invited students to come up and talk to him about it after class. He also said he was willing to work with students who felt that their grades were being affected by using other methods for note-taking after the first test, and he'd work with them. He explained he'd been doing this for several years now, and students in his classes got better grades and usually ended up deciding that, at least for this particular course, it was actually better not to use electronics. My son said that the students grumbled, but that because it was clear the professor was doing this to help students, not punish them for infractions they had not yet committed, the students actually ended up respecting him more. My son didn't pass every class that semester, but he did pass that one. Now, my son's experience matches the research. Studies have shown that while cell phone policies do affect student-teacher rapport, it matters less what your policy is, but more that you have an encouraging tone when you describe the policy. For example, a study found that policies that encourage the use of cell phones for instructional purposes resulted in significantly greater student perceptions of instructor credibility than policies discouraging the use of cell phones for non-instructional purposes. It found, quote, encouraging policies appear to result in greater perceptions of instructor caring, competence, and trustworthiness than discouraging policies, close quote. So, if you want to be perceived as trustworthy, caring, competent, you will find ways to use a positive tone in your cell phone policy. I see lots of teachers explain their cell phone bans by saying that students just can't handle phones. Folks, this isn't a positive tone for developing a cell phone policy, and it's setting you up as an adversary to students. You're punishing students for infractions they haven't even committed yet. It's better to frame a cell phone ban in a way that helps students to maintain rapport with you. Researchers suggest, quote, one way to counter students' negative reactions to restrictive cell phone policies would be to exert conscious effort to build rapport on the first day of class by being encouraging, flexible, enthusiastic, and fair, so that students will be more accepting of faculty technology policies, close quote. Studies have shown that students who experienced more rapport with their professor were more likely to enjoy the class material, attend class, pay attention, study, and take another class in the subject. Frisbee and Martin tested the relationship between instructor-student and student-student rapport in the classroom, and they found instructor rapport consistently predicted participation, effective learning, and cognitive learning. This important research shows that student perception of instructor rapport influences effective learning and classroom participation even more than student-to-student rapport. In other words, it is more important that students feel good about you than it is that they feel good about other students in the class when it comes to participation, effective learning, and cognitive learning. You can increase student rapport for you, the instructor, by maintaining a positive tone with your cell phone policies and thereby increase student participation, change their behavior for the good, and help students learn more. All right, today we've learned how to lead a group discussion on cell phone policies to 1, develop, or 2, explain an existing policy. We've talked about the questions to develop a policy. How do we determine the need, describe what it looks like, and develop a policy and the consequences. We've talked about when to use positive and negative reinforcement and how to use the positive tone to explain an already developed cell phone policy. I hope this was helpful for you, and I invite you to ask questions and make comments about this material in the comment section below. Also, please don't forget to take my post-instruction survey once you've finished watching this video to help me complete my master's project. Thanks so much.